bad boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? When you were 8 and you had bad traits, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must get cool. Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you?
Welcome to my YouTube channel, Cpegues. I'm your host, Cpegues, retired Deputy Inspector from the New York City Police Department. I did 21 years in the NYPD, rose to the rank of Deputy Inspector, commanded some of the most violent precincts of the city of New York. Today, I want to talk about a very tragic incident that happened in Chicago last October 2014. But before I go into that, many of you know that I have a book coming out next year called Once a Cop, my journey from former crack dealer to the highest ranks of the NYPD. This book is so much more relevant and prevalent at this time because of all of these incidents that's going on around the country. I talk about what's going on in law enforcement, and a lot of the things I talk about in this book attributes to why some of these things are happening around the country. So let's talk about Laquan McDonald. Rest in peace. My sincere condolences go out to your family, friends, and all of your loved ones. So after looking at that tape yesterday, I sat down at my kitchen table and had an objective view. Didn't want to be biased toward the cop or Laquan, who was executed, and I want to put that on record. He was executed. And after seeing that video, the first thing I want y'all to know is I really wasn't surprised. It's because, one, I've been in law enforcement for 2 decades. 2, I was born and raised, and I was running the streets, so I know what the streets is, I know what the policing is. And 3, you keep seeing these incidents happen around the country. I mean, just in the last couple of years, we had executions on camera. Tamir Rice, you had the McDonald case we just had, and for all due purposes, we had Eric Garner. All of these people were executed or murdered on video camera by on-duty police officers. So I wasn't surprised. I don't want America to be surprised at what happened yesterday on that video, but I want you to be surprised that America isn't taking the killing of unarmed black men as serious as they're taking ISIS, as serious as they're taking Al Qaeda. There is a war going on in black communities, and this is not by all the cops. We all know that, so I don't even want to play with your intelligence by saying all of the cops are bad, but there's some pretty rogue cops out there. And Officer Van Dyke, who executed Mr. McDonald, he's one that should have been on the radar. Now, clearly on this videotape, he did not pose a threat to the cops or anyone or even himself, which if he would have posed a threat to any of those 3 entities, you probably could have shot him to stop the threat, not execute, shot him to stop the threat. But this wasn't the case here. You had this cop roll up to the scene, get out of his car less than 6 seconds, and pretty much he just executed him. There's no need to go through the tape. As you can see, he was executed. Okay, not only that, but there was no medical attention or aid given to Mr. McDonald, who laid on that ground with smoke coming out of his body. The partner of Officer Van Dyke, former Officer Van Dyke, kicked the knife away, but didn't even try to give any medical attention. And we do know that he was still living, even though he was shot 16 times. He was still living because he died on the way to the hospital in the ambulance. That's what the report says. What's really tragic about this incident are a few things. I'm going to go through it. One, The videotape should have been released immediately. You know, the mayor of Chicago, which is the third biggest city in America, you would think that he would have took a play out of the book of the mayor of Charleston, South Carolina, where Walter Scott was murdered, clearly on video, shot 8 times in the back. And these two cases are very similar because this is the similarities. Walter Scott was executed, shot 8 times in the back, on video, dead. McDonald shot 16 times, on video, dead. And the only discrepancy between the two is Walter Scott was running, Mr. McDonald was walking. But there should have been swift justice, like South Carolina. Immediately after seeing the video, he was fired. He was arrested. The district attorney charged him with first-degree murder within a couple of days. It don't take a rocket scientist to look at this video and see that this was a clear execution. And for the police commissioner and the mayor to go on national television and say that the case is in somebody else's hand, you're playing on people's intelligence. It's really a sad state of affairs that the mayor and the police commissioner could stand up there and try to justify them not releasing this tape because it was in the hands of somebody else. Well, I do know that the commissioner of Chicago saw that tape immediately. And for the mayor to tell everybody that he did not see the tape, nobody's believing it. I'm not buying it. Because you can't settle a lawsuit with the city council within 5 to 6 months after this murder happened, intentional murder, I must say, without the mayor signing off on it. There's no way in the world. How do you settle a lawsuit 5 months after or 6 months after the killing of this young guy without any evidence? So no one saw the videotape? Are y'all wanting people to believe that no one saw this videotape? Listen, the time has come, I believe, that black law enforcement needs to stand up, stand proud, and start speaking out on all of these injustices. You can't tell me that you don't know who the hothead or the heavy-handed person is in a precinct or a district. I know that because I did 20 years. As soon as you get into a precinct, you start working, you know who the hothead is. He stands out. Look at Officer Van Dyke. 14 years on the job, 18 complaints against him. 18 complaints. I don't know if they're substantiated or not. But when you scroll through officers' backgrounds, most officers, they don't get complaints. It's only the ones that's out there doing what they're not supposed to do to American citizens that's getting the complaints. Okay? And for the police commissioner to get on national TV and says that Van Dyke does not represent Chicago Police Department. Well, let me ask you, Mr. Commissioner, Superintendent in Chicago, was he wearing a Chicago uniform, police department uniform, when he murdered Mr. McDonald? Yes, he was. Did you put him on paid administrative leave for an entire year after he murdered Mr. McDonald? Yes, he represents the Chicago Police Department. Did he spend 14 years in the Chicago Police Department? Yes, he represents the Chicago Police Department. So for the people that's not in law enforcement, you have to understand, these politicians and police commanders are going to say nothing but the nicest things after someone is murdered. But it's too late. And so I see in Chicago, have a bunch of black people standing behind them saying, hey, the mayor, the police commissioner, they're doing everything they can to fix things. Listen, I was in law enforcement. I know how this works. After every tragedy, they're going to come up, bells, whistles, I'm sorry, but it goes back to the same old thing. Every time we find a young black unarmed man or armed man killed that didn't pose a threat, the officer has a tremendous background and it doesn't look good. 18 complaints, 14 years. Why was he on patrol? Was there any fix to what he has done? Were any of these complaints substantiated? Okay, it's enough of the window dressing must stop. This was a tragic incident, and I'm sad to say that it won't be the last until black America decides that they're not going to stand by and let this happen. And the key to the black America is black law enforcement. So you have groups out there, Black Police Association, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. I'm waiting to hear their response. There need to be swift responses, but what needs to resonate throughout black law enforcement around America is we can't sit around, have these jobs, and think that we got a house, 2 cars, and a nice picket fence, that it's okay. It's not okay, because Walter Scott is my uncle. Walter Scott is my neighbor. Mr. McDonald is my son, 17 years old. That's my son. Tamir Rice is my son, is my grandson. We have to stand up now. The time is now for us to stand up. We cannot allow these politicians, these police commissioners, to keep allowing these rogue cops on the streets shooting down our kinfolk in cold blood. As a matter of fact, I can't believe that Chicago residents aren't screaming for the resignation of the superintendent of Chicago Police. There's no way that he should continue to be the police commissioner after seeing a video of an execution of an officer did in cold blood, and the only thing they did was put him on administrative leave. Now, his defense is going to be the unions. I don't want to hear anything about the unions. When clear on a videotape someone was executed, you don't need to call no union. Nobody needs to call. You need to call the district attorney. Here's the tape. He executed this person that had a 3-inch knife that didn't pose a threat. 13 to 14 bullets inside of that young man while he's on the ground is a union issue. Are you serious? It's a union issue. You can't, America, don't be bamboozled. The world, don't be bamboozled by what you're hearing on CNN, Fox News, when they come up with all of these grandiose plans. Oh, we're going to get together, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They're not doing anything. Until you start putting bracelets and handcuffs on people, carrying them out, calling a press conference and parading officers, rogue officers in front of cameras, the other cops are not going to care. It's just going to be the same old case. Garner, Rice, McDonald, Scott, Gurley, Clark in Minneapolis. It doesn't stop. The list will continue until the mayors and the police chiefs, commissioners, superintendents start disciplining these cops. And the discipline I'm talking about is putting them in jail. If a civilian would have been caught on camera executing somebody with 16 shots, do you think it would have been a year? Do you think it would have been a year for them to figure this out, America? Do you think if that was a young Jewish 17-year-old guy in the middle of the street, laying in blood with smoke coming out of his body after being executed with 16 shots, do you think it would have been a year? Really? I'm really appalled at the behavior of these rogue cops, but more importantly, their lack of discipline, top down. In policing, everything is top down. It's not bottom up. It's top down. So the leaders out there, if you're a leader, then we need you to lead in our community. If you don't want to be there, then step down. And again, I'm calling for the resignation of the superintendent of police in Chicago. He should not be there. After witnessing that video a year ago, witnessing that and not terminating this guy. Termination. He should have been terminated, and then you let the DA charge him with the crime. Let him fight for his job back, just like they do with the black cops. They fire him and make them try to fight to get their job back. That guy should have been terminated, and the buck stops right at the superintendent's desk. Again, thank you for watching my YouTube channel, Cpegues. Please pass this video on to friends and family. And unfortunately, I will probably be back with some more commentary on the tragic incident, because it's not going to stop America until black people and black law enforcement say enough is enough. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, I always keep it right, not real.